Bonjour Roger, comment vas-tu aujourd'hui?
What?
Hello Roger.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Great Convos. He threw a curveball on me on that one. Well, we always say, whether you agree or disagree, you can always find Great Convos. I'm Roger Caesar, and that gentleman over there.
Bonjour, je suis Alexandre Matte. Roger, yeah, sometimes I will speak in French to you, even though I know you don't understand most of the words that I pronounce, but it's part of my identity.
Yes, it is.
And like many people, sometimes you will have dual or multiple identities. So it's interesting, yeah, that I would be interested to know among our viewership who considers themselves to have dual or multiple identities. Let's start with that opening question, Roger.
That is a great opening question. And as always, we welcome our loyal listeners for joining us today. Put it in the chat. Say hello. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we truly appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. And yes, we have a conversation that's going to get deep. Going to have a lot to say with regards to our guest who is coming on about identity and many other conversations along that path, so to speak. So, Alex, why don't you get started and introduce our special guest today?
Of course, our guest is Richard Marceau. Let me get the title up here. There we go. Richard Marceau, who has worn and still wears a lot of hats. He's been, and I guess still is, a lawyer, an author. He was member of parliament for the Bloc Québécois in Canada. He's a community leader. And his book is titled, I've actually got it here. Hey, his book is Juif, une histoire québécoise, or in its English version, A Quebec Jew. It's a memoir about identity, about belonging, about community. Fascinating. So we're going to ask, is it possible to be more than one thing? And this is why we are asking if Richard has more than one story, and we're actually going to ask if opposite identities can coexist. Please welcome Richard Marceau.
Welcome, Richard.
Thank you for having me.
Richard, the name of the book is, in its English version, A Quebec Jew. Let's start with the title, because it could have been a Jewish Quebecer or a Jewish French Canadian. Why a Quebec Jew?
Well, that's certainly one of the ways that I identify myself. But I want to go back just a little bit. So the book, at least in the French version, came out in the context that I found that a lot of French Quebecers had no idea who Jews were, had no idea about Israel, had no idea about the Jewish community, even though the Jews have been in Quebec for more than 250 years. So I was looking for a way to, I guess, to do a Jews, Israel, Judaism 101 for French Quebecers, and that's a genesis of the book. And when the book was published, a lot of my Anglo friends said, "Well, we're jealous. We'd like to have something similar." So I translated and adapted the book, and in order for it to be published in English to an English-speaking audience. So it's somewhat different from the French version, but at the same time, it's still fairly faithful to it. Some purely Quebec details or artists that my Anglo friends would not know are not included in the narrative, but the main points are there.
Right. Now, I read the version, the original one, en français. So there's a lot of parallels between Quebec and Israel, between the Francophones and the Jewish people. How do you present yourself to an English-speaking crowd differently than you would to Quebecers and French Canadians?
Well, the first thing is I'm an individual, right? And here, I think it's important to say that nobody can fit in one box. Like, we're all multiple things. We're all wear multiple hats. We're wife, we're husband, we're father, we're son, we are daughter, we're mother, we're cousin, we live in Montreal, we live in Toronto, we live in Canada, the US, or wherever. So to try to fit people in one box is, I think, is a wrong way to see things. And the second thing is that I don't think human beings are so Cartesians that they would, everything would fit perfectly one way or another. So humans are messy. Human nature is messy. People can have, contradictory ideas. Whoever's married wouldn't know about that. And so, whatever we have discussions about identities, let's not forget about each person being unique, and each person being a human mess, so to speak. So it's I think that's a good starting point, because when we try to fit people in a box, we don't see people as individuals, and I think that we've seen in the past that that's not a way to have great things happen.
Now, Richard, with regards to your book and having in both the English and the French version, was there any pushback? Anybody reached out to you and maybe had some controversial thoughts with regards to the things that you were saying in it?
No, but then because I did a cross Canada tour, I spoke in synagogues, I spoke in chambers of commerce, I spoke in Rotary clubs and in different places. So it was, there was some not pushback, but some hard questions sometimes, and fair enough. I think that's fair when an author publishes something, and I'm not shy with my opinions. And some people disagreed with that, and as you, Roger, put it at the beginning, it's one way to have good conversation. So the identity part was not problematic. There were some questions as to how can you be both. So that question came up. Questions of loyalty sometimes came up. But overall, it was all good discussions, and there was nobody that came into, pardon the expression, like gunning for me or tried to attack me, so to speak. But good discussions, certainly.
Questions about being both. I mean, this is something that I've found myself also, because as we know, Roger, I'm sort of the same dual identity as Richard. I'm French Canadian and I'm Jewish. Now, for me, it comes from a mixed marriage. Maybe we'll ask Richard how he came about to have this dual identity. But I don't think I've ever met anyone before Richard and since meeting Richard that is not only French Canadian and Jewish, but also sovereigntist, meaning he was part of the Bloc Québécois, which wishes to see Quebec be its own country, and Jewish at the same time. Now, are there many people who said you can't be both? If you are with us, you can't be with them. If you're with them, you can't be with us.
So nobody asked me that. So somebody asked me how, the fact that most Jews in Montreal, for example, where I'm speaking you from today, most Jews are English speaking and have a strong attachment to Canada. And there has been in the past challenges between French Canadians and Jews. There has been in the past some tension, but at the same time, Quebec is still the only place in Canada that funds Jewish day school, for example. The Montreal Jewish community is 94,000 strong, despite problems that we may want to get into. The anti-Semitism exists here, but it exists in a similar fashion that it exists in Toronto, in Paris, in London, or New York. So the challenges that the Jews are facing nowadays with a spike in anti-Semitism is fairly similar. So it's not particular to Quebec. But here's the bottom line, is that I like diversity. I believe in diversity. I like that humans are not the same. Whereas I believe that there has to be no, I was talking at the beginning that we're all individuals and we have to see individuals and see people as individuals. At the same time, we're not in a vacuum, like where we were born, who our parents were, the language we speak, the religion, if any, that we practice, our personal experience also kind of mold us, and that's what makes, I think, part of what makes humanity sometimes infuriating, but also interesting. So in this case, to have Jews and French Quebecers be different, but also interact, to me, it's interesting, and I find myself sometimes like as a bridge or an explanator, if there's such a word. So I often translate Quebec culture to my Jewish friends, either from Montreal or anywhere else in the world, and do the opposite, explaining the Jewish community, what makes Jews tick, what is important for Jews, to my fellow Quebecers. So that that kind of bridge, I think, is important. And if I may, there was a few years ago, I went out west and I met people from a First Nations, and the person I met called himself an edge walker. He says, "I'm firmly planted in my community. I'm a proud member of Nation X, but I'm on the edge, and I'm able to reach out beyond the border so that I can reach out to others and be that bridge." It so happens that I have a foot in two circles or two worlds, and even more than that, because I'm first language is French, but I'm work mainly now in English. I'm Jewish, very involved in the Jewish community, but also my work is outward facing. So I'm at the border or at the edge of many universes. On the one hand, it makes it a bit uncomfortable because it's you're never fully in one place, but at the same time, it certainly makes life exciting.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
You're a human bridge. A human bridge is I guess that's a big advantage of having the dual identities. Roger?
Yeah, I was just going to say I have multiple identities too, and from where I'm from in the Caribbean, from American, from Canadian, and there are a lot of times where there's pure assumptions that may happen based on one or the other from other people, and I know that the question that I have for you is, has that ever happened to you, where there's that blanketing effect? Hey, you're this, that means that you must do this or that. Has that been a certain thing? Because I know for myself, even as a Black person, I've had those type of blanketing assumptions that are put on me, or if I'm for the Caribbean side of it, or the American side, or the Canadian side, there's those blanketing assumptions that happen. Can you touch on that in terms of you and who you are growing up, and even now with the book and everything that you've done, similar to Alex himself, but has there been those type of conversations that have happened where people assume something about you based off of who you are that isn't maybe true?
I actually think with my personal source, I have somewhat of a profile as I was a member of parliament. I do a fair bit of media. Oftentimes it's the opposite, right? Because people don't know what to make of it. If it was, French Canadian, of Catholic not practicing, because most Quebecers are not practicing anymore, it'd be easier to assume something about me. Or if I was just Jewish, born and raised Jewish in the Jewish community, then that would apply. Now people look at me and it's confusing. I'm French Canadian from Catholic descent, but my synagogue that I go to is an English Ashkenazi, so Eastern European synagogue. And when I'm outside and I speak to the public, for example, I do media, people know I'm Jewish because it's well known, and I've written about it and I've spoken about it. So it's actually the opposite. So people don't know what assumptions to make, and it's probably difficult for them, but at the same time, I think it underlines the first point that I was making, that is that you cannot box people in. We
try to put a label on you. We we wish we could put labels, simple labels. You are this, you are that. But the simple fact is that humans are not as simple as labels. Human beings are complex. What did you say? We are messy.
Well, humans are messy, and families and human communities are messy. And just to take another quick example from my own family. So, one of my sons got married last summer. He married a wonderful young woman, born and raised in Beijing, came to North America in her late teens, stayed in North America. She converted to Judaism as well. So we now have, my family is partly Ashkenazi, partly French Canadian descent, now partly Chinese, and who else? We don't know who my other son is going to marry. So even in my little family unit, people can fit in boxes, and I'm not sure that I'm that different from most people. Certainly, or at the very least, people who live in diverse, multicultural, multi-ethnic societies like we do now.
Well, Mazel Tov on the wedding.
Sorry, Alex. Let me just ask one real quick question here before we get started. What then do you say to those who will challenge you to pick a side? What do you say to people who still talk that way?
You can box me in. I don't have to choose. There's an old Jewish saying, and it's I think it fits in a different way here. If I'm only for myself, who am I? But if I'm only for others, what am I doing for me? It's more beautifully said than that. But you cannot only be for yourself or only be for others, right? That tension between the particular and the universal, the individual and the collective will always be there. If you're only for yourself, you're missing out. But if you forget yourself, there's also a big part missing. So that tension exists in all of us. And it's true, I think, throughout one's life. And sometimes we're more on one side of the spectrum and another time at the other side of the spectrum. But overall, that tension exists. And we go back to we are individuals molded by experience, by our family, by our society we grew up in, whether by embracing it or rejecting it, because some people decide to move away and do completely different things. And I refuse to be boxed in.
Richard, you've been member of parliament for the Bloc Québécois, starting in 1997 for 2 or 3 terms, right?
3 terms, yes.
For 3 terms. And you tried another term but didn't go in. So you shifted and went from member of parliament to now being the senior vice president for strategic initiatives of the CIJA, or Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. The subtitle of your book, and I'm going to put it right here, the subtitle, A Québec Jew, from Bloc Québécois MP to Jewish activist, from one to the other. Did you have to stop being one to be the other?
Actually, no. There's a silver lining, or there's a continuum here, is that what interested me has always been public policy. So how can I be a participant in the public debate, on the public square? I have ideas. I want to share them. I want to convince people of them. So one way of doing it was through elective office, which I was honored to do for 3 terms. And then I stayed in the public affairs area, but in different matter. So part of me still, very often interact with members of parliament or parliamentarians. Just a couple of weeks ago, I testified in the Senate on a particular bill. I do media, again, participating in the public square. So the thing that kind of joins those two aspects of my professional life are a desire and a commitment to get engaged in the public square, either from parliament or from other soapbox.
Roger?
Very interesting. Yeah, well, very interesting. I love when I'm listening to you, Richard. Obviously, some of the key points that come out is the bridges and that humans are messy. And I think that we have to understand as a society in general that we, as you put it, can't be put in a box, and that we'll have multiple identities, multiple places where we can identify ourselves as being a part of without feeling like we can't be a part of another thing or another sector of society. In
Yes.
your world, yeah, go ahead if you have
No,
something to
please,
say.
please, in my world, please.
In your world, how do you change the mindsets of those who still, and I know it sounds the same as the question before, but I'm more going along the lines of, as you are doing what you're doing today, are you seeing others opening up their minds and recognizing that, yeah, it's okay to be a dual citizen, or not a dual citizen, but a dual identities and still coexist? Are you seeing the opening up of that now?
Yes and no. I think we've seen people interacting more and more with people who are different from themselves, right? So that is, people are more used to that. At the same time, there's a pressure, there's a societal pressure amplified by social media, like to take a stand and to be very black and white and this, and the more strident you are, the more clicks you'll get, the more profile you'll get, or whatever you get on social media. So I see both. I try to be nuanced. I think the world is a nuanced place. I don't think there are many things that are black and white. Some are, but generally, again, going back to the messiness, there's also the fact that two things can be true at the same time. So it's the necessity to see the human being in front of us, beside us, with us, that we always have to keep in mind. There's an old, when without being preachy, because I don't have a missionary, the soul of a missionary, like trying to convince people of one thing. But one thing that I like in the Jewish tradition is that everybody is B'Tselem Elohim. They are created in the image of God. So everybody's created in the image of God, whether you're male or female, whether you're black or Asian or white, Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, whatever you are made in the image of God. You have inherent value, and the more we see the value in the other, even when we disagree, I think the more the world we are building will be good.
Well said.
McKinley says, "Amen."
Richard, even after hearing all of this, what if someone hearing this still feels that they don't fit neatly into a single group or label that they would like to fit in here or there or anywhere? What would you say to someone who is struggling to find their way in one community or another, in one religion or another, in one country or another, in one identity or another?
Well, the first thing is you have to find yourself. You have to find what you want from life, what you want in your life. Alex, you were mentioning at the beginning that you were born in a interfaith family, and you're Jewish from your mother, who's a lovely woman. And I say hi to her. I chose a different religion from the one that I was born in. It was after years of thoughts and of an exploration. And so some people can also change identity, but I chose who I am who I am. It's my life, and we make choices accordingly. And sometimes in life that will bring about a different identity. Like Roger, you were mentioning that you Caribbean, American, and Canadian. Like some of the, presumably when somebody's an immigrant, there's part of it is a choice, right? You decide to uproot yourself and go into another country. So you adopt another identity. That's by choice. A chosen identity is as valid for me as a born into identity. And in life, some people will, during their own journey, might end up in very different places and identity-wise from the place that they were born when they came out of their mother's womb.
And here she is, by the way, ma maman, saying
Hi, Ma.
enchanté.
Bonjour, Ma.
My Jewish mother, whose second language is French, but still raised my sister and me in French, in her second language, but in her first religion and community. So yeah, interesting to have these dual identities from one single person.
And again, like identities are not static, and it's an important part, I think, of this discussion. Like identities can be chosen, and that adds to the complexity, to the messiness that we were talking earlier, Roger.
Right. Well, we have reached the end of this episode. We could sit here and talk forever with you. It's been a great conversation all around. We thank you very much, Richard. Alex, I'm going to leave you with the final thoughts on this.
Sure. Well, first, I'd like to know how we can know more about you or what you do. How can we reach you or find out more about?
I guess the easiest way would be to follow me on social media. I guess Twitter is the main one. So at least you might not know more about me, but certainly about what I think. And two, there are the books that you mentioned, Juif, une histoire québécoise, or the English version of Quebec Jew. Out of print, easily you can find them in many public libraries across the country. And if you wanted to talk to me more, reach out to me through social media, and happy to continue the conversation.
Perfect. And I found this in a private library in my parents' house, and it was dedicated. There are the both of them. The English one dedicated to my mother, the French one dedicated to my father. And I'm actually going to read one little part of it as I translate freely. When I converted to Judaism, when I became Jewish, I did not become less of a Quebecer or Québécois. I stayed Québécois, but in a different way. I didn't remove anything from my original identity. I added to it. You can be more than one thing at one time, and you can be fully in both communities at the same time. I love it, Richard.
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
That is a
Thank you.
perfect way to end this off. And as we always say here on Great Convos, keep the conversations going with others. Talk about this. Ask people how they feel with regards to multiple identities. And as we always say, whether you agree or disagree, you can always find Great Convos. Thank you again, Richard. And thank you to our loyal listeners for listening in. See you next week.
Au revoir. Shalom.
Bye.